Hey guys, Cody with CJC Off-Road, and today we're going to be talking about running 37-inch tires on your 2017 up Super Duty truck. Now these are commonly referred to as the Aluminum Duty platform, so everything we discussed today will be pertaining to a 17 and up F250 and F350. And yeah, let's jump right on into it. Now for those of you who are just looking for the cliff notes of this video, to run a 37-inch tire on, again, a 17 and up Aluminum Duty truck, you're going to want to shoot for a wheel that has 0 to plus 18 offset on a 9.5-inch wheel at its widest. What that's going to do is allow you to run a 37 by 1250 tire with a little to no trimming, and a 1350 tire with little to a lot of trimming. Now again, we have a separate video showing just how we trim the Super Duty trucks. Once these trucks are trimmed, they're very forgiving with wheel and tire specs. Those of you coming over from the GM and the Dodge platform, we kind of have to thread a needle trying to find a offset and tire combination that really clears well. Once you do some trimming on these Super Duty trucks, this is inside the fender well, not outside of the fender well. Again, they're gonna be very forgiving. So if you do have something that's very close to these specs, but not quite there, you're probably gonna get away with running it. Can I run 37s? Yes, you can. I've had a 2018, 21, and now a 23 Super Duty. Every single truck has been on a very heavy wheel and tire combination using a 37-inch tire. All of my trucks have towed. I now have a slide end camper in the 23. I've used these trucks short of hauling a house. I have used these trucks, essentially to their capabilities. We've jumped these trucks. We've done all kinds of stuff. The 37s work well. The truck is designed to haul a lot of weight, so your brakes are oversized. The cooling system of the truck's oversized. Basically, everything on this truck is much larger than what you would get on an F-150 or 1500 platform. Something where you really got to think about running a larger tire. It's really not a concern on these newer trucks. Then when you jump into the new 10-speed transmissions that Ford's putting in these trucks now, it really becomes even less of an issue, even on the gas trucks. Sometimes the guys with the gas platform trucks like to re-gear, gain a little bit of that bottom end back. They still work very well. And again, the 10-speed really cuts down the need to even re-gear in this modern day. Now, the most important question we ask the customer when they ask, can I run a 37-inch tire on this truck, is what wheel are you gonna be going with? So again, on a 17 and up truck, if you're gonna run the stock wheel, typically you cannot just put a 37 by 1250 tire on the truck, and you certainly cannot put a 37 by 1350 tire on the truck without rubbing. Now, this is not rubbing that you can lift the truck out of, because it's rubbing on the sway bar as well as the factory radius arm. For those of you with the 2023 and up truck, they've actually made some changes to the frame, the radius arm, and the sway bar. You can actually run a 37 by 1250 tire on your factory wheel without rubbing, and we've run a 37 by 1350 with very minimal rubbing. In fact, it was rubbed so little that you could still drive the truck around town, park in strip mall parking lot, things like that. So that was a very cool combination to run as well. Now, for those of you who have also just seen a set of 23 radius arms and takeoff sway bars from a guy who just lifted his truck, you cannot put those on a 22 and down truck, as the frame brackets have changed, at least on the radius arms. The sway bar, we typically just say toss the factory bar and go with the Carly torsion sway bar, where it allows for more clearance and a better ride, but we'll get into that a little later. Now, if you are running the factory flares like what comes on a Tremor model, or if you've bought them aftermarket, that plus 18 wheel with a 37 1250 is going to be as flush with that fender flare as possible. So for those of you who are going to want something that sticks out a little bit more, that might not be the option for you. However, if you are the consumer who does not want to trim much, or if at all, again, that 37 1250 with that plus 18 wheel is the ideal combo. We put them on the new 2023 Super Duties and had customers do 0 trimming and get full clearance around town. Now, for those of you who want your wheel and tire combination to stick out just a hair more, again, past that Tremor flare, or a little bit more past where it would sit with a non-flared truck, I would look at the 0 to plus 12 offset when it comes to a wheel, again, with 9.5 inches wide being the widest wheel that you're looking at. That's gonna allow you to do, again, just a little to no trimming and clear a 37 by 1250 tire, or run a 37 1350, which is gonna give you an even burlier stance, and yet do, just the standard trimming that we do on a Super Duty without having to hack anything up. Now again, this all pertains to a 9.5 inch wide wheel. So for those of you who are looking at a 10-inch wheel, 12-inch wheel, 14-inch wheel, you're gonna have to be very careful. Now again, the difference in all of the wheel widths versus the offset, because you might even see like a 4 3/4 inch backspace wheel, but it's 10 inches or 12 inches wide. The problem with that is when you turn your truck, it's putting the widest part of the tire right at the fender line of your truck. The issue with that becomes it's really hard to trim. So you want to be very careful when, again, looking at anything past 9.5 inches wide, because when you are running that 4 3/4 inch or wider offset, which is very common on a 12 or 14 or 16 inch wide wheel, it's really gonna be tough to do when it comes to running it on a leveling system. Now we are talking about all this as it pertains to a leveling or 2.5-inch system, again, depending on how your truck came from factory. If you're looking at a 4.5-inch truck, you can actually get away with a lot more wider setups, and in which case, you know, you have a little bit of leeway. Now, when you are going to be looking at a 4.5-inch or 5.5-inch Carli system, you're going to be able to run a little bit wider, a little bit more non-traditional setup. So the by 10 wheels, very often we see the Method 605, which is a 20 by 10 wheel. That's gonna have that 4.5 inches of back spacing. We've seen customers run both the 37 1250 and 37 1350 tires on those. You're gonna have to do some trimming back at the cab side. Every once in a while, if you're running a really wide setup, you may need to use a bumper spacer kit, which we do sell. That's gonna push your front bumper just a little bit forward and keep you from having to trim the actual metal on your bumper, which I really don't think anyone wants to do. It's also an easy plug to buy the tremor valence that we also sell if your truck did not come with it, because that tremor valence is gonna be a shorter valence, and that's gonna keep the trimming to a minimum on the valence when running a by 10 or by 12 wheel package. Now again, as I stated, all of this references back to a 2017 and up Super Duty with a leveling or 2.5-inch system. Now it's gotten very convoluted over the years of what constitutes a leveling kit, 2.5-inch or 3.5-inch system, or even a 1.5-inch system on a Super Duty. Now at CJC Off-Road, we typically always go with a coil spring lift, and that's why we're always referencing these 2.5-inch lift coils, which are going to get varying degrees of lift depending on the trim of your truck. If it's a tremor, for instance, it's only going to bring the front of the truck up 1.5 inches because it's pre-lifted from the factory. Now, another thing to note when trying to run a 37-inch tire underneath these trucks, there's a few key components. First being an adjustable track bar or even a track bar bracket, which is something we're not a huge fan of, but something that we see on some of the cheaper lift kits. That's going to help center up the front axle. Your front axle is way offset to one side. When you do go to full lock, that's going to put one side of the tire very close to your frame, your radius arms, and your sway bar, which could cause fitment issues. So that's why all the systems, or pretty much all the systems we offer, come with an adjustable track bar. Now, if you are, again, going to be running like a plus 18 or a stock wheel on a 37 1250 or 37 1350, you may come up with contact, as I alluded to earlier, on the radius arms and sway bar on a 17 to 22 truck. Now, that is where the Carli adjustable radius arms and the Carli torsion sway bar come in. That Carli adjustable radius arm is going to have a pocket for tire clearance, allowing a 37 by 1350, even on a stock wheel, to clear. Then up front, you have their torsion sway bar, which has its own sway bar arms, which give you over an inch of further clearance up front. Therefore, when you go to full lock, it is not going to contact the sway bar up front. So those are very cool parts, not only for the tire clearance, but also for the ride quality improvements that we talk about in many other videos from those components. Now, as I stated, those 4.5-inch, 5.5-inch, and even 6-inch systems allow for a lot more forgiving setup, so keep that in mind if that's what you're shopping for. Please don't comment down below and tell me that your 37 by 14s fit on your 20 by 12s and it works, because I'm acknowledging that it will work depending on the setup on the taller trucks. This is very particular to the guys who don't want a crazy wide setup or don't want to trim the ever-living heck out of their trucks and just want a very clean setup. Now, another thing that I have not mentioned as we're wrapping this video up is the actual width of your very specific set of 37 by 1250s or 37 by 1350s. You're going to want to go on the tire manufacturer website, click the actual specifications, and look at just how wide or how narrow that tire is. For instance, a BFG tire is always going to measure a little less than the actual specs. However, if you go with like a Toyo MT tire, that 37 by 1350 Toyo MT actually measures over 14 inches wide. So that's something to consider in all of these calculations or when trying to come up with a perfect setup for your truck. Now, basically, a simple rule of thumb is going to be if it's an all-terrain tire, it's probably going to be true to size or a touch undersized. And if it's a mud terrain tire, it's going to be true to size or even oversized. So just, again, keep that in mind, as that can be a slight variable when choosing your tires. Now, in summary, what do you need to run 37-inch tires on your Illuminati truck? It's going to be a leveling kit or higher, and it's typically going to include an aftermarket wheel, a little bit of trimming, and being very aware of whether you're running a 37 by 1250 or a 37 by 1350 tire. Now, if you still have a little bit of trouble visualizing the setups, there's actually going to be a link down below to an article we've written showing you wheel and tire combinations where we know how they clear, what they look like on the truck, and some very good photos to give you guys who are visual learners a little bit better of an idea. If you still have questions, feel free to comment down below, send us an email, or even give us a phone call. We'll be happy to dial in a perfect setup for you guys. As of now, we're actually just shipping wheel combinations, but however, in the next year or so, we hope to be shipping complete mounted wheel and tire options to you guys. So yeah, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys on the next one.